we live by our subconscious about 95% of the time. And we are only conscious, meaning being here, being aware of where we are and being here now kind of thing, about 5% of the time. So if we're thinking about anything other than right now, we're working on our subconscious and that 95% of the stuff that got recorded when we were age 0 up to 6 or 7 years old. And so, I mean, there's been a lot of studies on that. And in fact, the Jesuits have said, give me a child when he's until he's 7, and we'll have him for the rest of our lives or his life. So they know this stuff. Well, the dark side knows this stuff too. So everybody goes through this. Everybody goes through this. We're programmed as young children into our subconscious. And it's just like a tape recording. You can't go change it unless you rewrite it or unless you erase it. So, it's like any tape recorder, right? And so that takes some doing, and that takes some getting inside yourself and figuring out, what is on that tape. Well, that's kind of where I went, and spent an awful lot of time watching my thoughts, paying attention to the kinds of knee-jerk reactions I was having, even going to the point of stopping myself mid-action or mid-sentence to say to whoever I was talking to, wait a minute, let me just do a redo on that. I'm going in the wrong direction. So for a while there, I probably drove my friends a little crazy trying to, while I was trying to figure out what was recording and what was actually now. So it was a pretty confusing time.
Well, it sounds like you had developed, a remedial means to deal with this, because a lot of people are unaware of their own thoughts. And if they're unaware of their own thoughts, they're certainly not going to be aware of these intrusive thoughts that exist outside of them that's trying to work its way in.
Everybody's brainwashed. It's no wonder we're in this state.
Yeah, for sure. And the whole planet, I mean, I've come to the conclusion that the planet has been invaded by the dark side. And so, but we don't know it. Some of us do, and more of us are becoming aware of it. And so I think that until we all recognize that this is what's happening, we're not going to get out of this mess. That none of our thoughts are our own. We get the positive and the negative thoughts, and then we choose which one we want to take. That makes sense to me.
Yep.
Because our thoughts we're connected to consciousness, right? So the whole universe is consciousness.
Well, we're transceivers and receivers, aren't we? So it makes sense that we're
right. Our brains are transceivers and receivers, and then according to what we have in our hearts and in our mind, or what our training is, then we'll decide which way to go. So
how do we put this stuff into action? To be free of this, we need what are essentially two psychological tools, and they are rationality and conviction. And we're going to look at what each of those means. First, to the importance of rationality. Swedenborg says rationality is essential. Our ability to make free, rational decisions about what we prioritize in life is essential, not just to navigating physical life, but it's essential to our spiritual growth as well, which is another reason perhaps why hell is trying to push for things that disrupt our rationality, such as getting too wrapped up in a particular substance. And we have Dr. Sony Werner explaining a little bit about why and how becoming dependent on a substance interferes with the rational brain. So here she is.
We all have a reward system. Let me show you a little bit about what normally works in our brain. Now, down here is inside of your neck area. That's called the midbrain. And down here, called the VTA, is where things start. when we're about to, let's say if we really love chocolate, or we really love cigarettes, or we really love cocaine. But in a normal setting, let's say we're really liking chocolate cake. Down here is where things start. And it goes up here to the Na, which is the nucleus accumbens. And right there, that's what releases dopamine. Dopamine is a neurotransmitter, like a chemical. And when a neurotransmitter goes up to this part of the brain, up to the front, that's behind your forehead, that's when we feel happy. That's when we feel excited when our football team wins. That's when we feel excited because we ate the chocolate cake. That's a normal reward system. And then once the dopamine kind of dissipates, then we calm down. And then we're back to kind of a steady state. Now, the problem with an opiate or a heroin, cocaine, is that it sort of intensifies the whole system. So again, starting here, going to here, going to here. Now, let me point out something that's really important. Right here, right about here, behind the frontal lobe, that's what, if that's active, that's when you're making really careful decisions. Like, let's say you're trying to drive according to the speed limit, or you're trying to make sure not to waste all your money, or you're trying to make sure to be kind to the people near you. And then another part right next to it is called the ACC. And it's almost like reins that we have on a wild horse that wants to go really fast. And if we have those reins, we can control our emotions. We can control our cravings. But unfortunately, those parts of the brain are not functioning very well when we're really an addict, when we're really a substance use disordered person. So the problem is that you have dopamine, which again, when that's released from one neuron to another, that's what makes you feel joyful, euphoric. But the problem is with something like heroin or cocaine is that we get way too much. And so the little tiny microscopic parts of the brain are just flooded with that dopamine. And it can't be, it's called reuptake, which means it gets recycled back into the system. Things get clogged. And after a while, it doesn't work so well.
And that stuff back in here that allows you to make rational, careful, objective decisions is essential. It's got to be functioning in order for us to grow spiritually. But that is disrupted by being addicted or using a substance. But even when you're not using the substance, there's all this time we spend thinking about it. Whatever our particular fixation is, there's all the time sort of leading up to it. That also, we're not totally in our rational state there as well. And Sony described that a bit.
Now, what's interesting is that researchers are now looking at what happens when somebody is craving. They know what it feels like to have the euphoria from cocaine, and they get into drug-seeking behavior. Just like if I love coffee or I love chocolate, I'm in a coffee-seeking behavior. I go to Starbucks and I want my coffee. And all the anticipation of going to get it is, we're almost excited with anticipation. Well, imagine that 100 times more for somebody who's going to their street corner to get the cocaine, or they see the drug paraphernalia. Their heart is racing. They're getting excited about it. And we even get addicted to the anticipation before we actually get the drug in our body. So just the very thought of it, we are flooding our body, our brain with that dopamine. And that means the really logical part of our brain, it's taking a nap. It's not going to regulate us.
And why am I going on, or why are we going on so much about rationality? Why does it matter? From a Swedenborgian perspective, let's lay out the importance of rationality in the mind. And here's a little chart to help us along. That's our mind on the left, right? You have your higher, most basic division is the higher and lower mind. If your higher goals and feelings, and then your lower impulses, your cravings, right? And those two are at war. The lower impulses and cravings are trying to take out the higher ones and run the show. In Divine Providence 260, Swedenborg says, the earthly mind, being the envelope and vessel of the higher levels of the human mind, is reactive. If the higher levels are not opened, it acts against them. And you don't got to have Swedenborg to tell you that. We all know that stuff that is more impulsive and less rational can at times sabotage our higher, more noble aspirations in life. But are they always just going to be at war like that? No, because there is this middle actor that is rationality. As Swedenborg says, when it's functioning rightly, rationality can work to subdue the lower impulses and cravings and keep them from trying to run the entire program. It's not that they need to be gone, but when they've been subdued, our higher aspirations, the spiritual stuff in us, can actually move through the rationality into this lower part. Swedenborg says in Divine Providence 260, whereas if they are opened, it acts with them, they being the higher levels of the mind. So it becomes that we're not getting rid of the lower, more superficial cravings in life, but they are turned towards things that can cohabitate with the higher, more important goals, the spiritual things in life. So the three work as this system together. That's how it's meant to be, all the parts functioning together rather than fighting against each other, and it ends up with the best scenario for us. However, there are things that can interrupt it. We're going to look at two. Swedenborg says mental illness can kind of put it on pause. He says mental illness deprives us of rationality and therefore of the freedom to act rationally. That it's hard for us to have a rigid barrier between the two or create order. And also the other side of it is what he calls a bodily disorder that affects the brain. So he says the state of the mind depends upon the state of the body. So addiction or substance use disorder would probably could fall along both of those, just showing that these are things that disrupt that natural flow. And it's not, you don't have to be in one of those. It can just be that we get irrational sometimes, but you can see that those disrupt what is meant to be this barrier of sorts, or this moderating influence that keeps the peace between the higher and lower things in our mind. So Swedenborg talks a little bit more about the importance of rationality and freedom and why we need them in Divine Providence 85, where he says that the reason we are reformed and regenerated by means of these two abilities known as rationality and freedom, the reason that in fact we cannot be reformed and regenerated without them, is that it is through our rationality that we can discern and know what is evil and what is good, and therefore what is false and what is true. Now, these evil and good, there's a loaded language, and I said we're not saying that we're evil for our various addictions or things that we're stuck in. Think about harmful and beneficial. It's just when you get to a point where it's hard for me to really be choosing what's beneficial for myself because I can't tell it apart from gratification, right? So he says, then through our freedom, we can intend what we discern and know. And
the first thing that I did was, okay, so I'm going to reprogram my brain. I'm going to try a new program. And everything I came up with was really complicated. And I knew I needed to have something that I could remember while I'm in the midst of being attacked by these intrusive thoughts. Because when that's happening to you, first you have to know that that's happening. That's one big, huge step. And then when you do know that that's happening, you have to remember the thing that you have to do to make it stop and make it change, right? And so reprogramming your mind can be a very complicated thing. So when I realized that everything I'd been told about who I am is a flat out lie, I decided to keep it short, keep it real short, and just say that's a lie. And so I started doing that when I would, get these knee-jerk reaction things that I did, or when I'd start overreacting to something, I would just say, stop, that's a lie. I'm doing this. I'm not doing this anymore. I'm doing this. And I would think of something else. And so I had to develop things to think about. And it can be anything. It has to be simple in the beginning. It has to be simple all the way through for it to work really well and quickly. You just have to remember. That's the key, is remembering, because when you're in the midst of being attacked, you can't remember squat. You're involved in it. You're embroiled in it. This horrible thing is happening to you. These crazy thoughts are going through your head, and you don't know how to stop it. You can even say things like, "Stop it! I don't want that." Well, that doesn't work. But what does work is say, "That's a lie," and start thinking of something else. And it can be anything else. It can be a sunrise. It can be a rose. It can be the love of your dog or your cat, or it can be, listening to some music that you like. It can be taking a walk and looking at nature, and just anytime that foreign thought comes in, just keep on saying, that's a lie. That's a lie. That's a lie. When you believe that that's a lie, everything changes. But until you actually know that it's a lie, you just have to keep doing it. Does that make sense?
Absolutely, it does. And how persistent were these intrusive thoughts once you embarked on this program of self-program of changing the programming, so to speak?
Yeah, it's very, it gets worse. It really gets worse because now that I know what these are, and I know that these are what I call dark side entities, at the time when I first started, I didn't know that that's what they were. But now that I know that, I can understand why, they would attack even more than before. When you start doing this program, you just have to keep plowing through, and that's because you're getting ready to cut off their food supply. Because when we're in a negative state of any kind, whether it's feeling insecure, whether it's anger, whether it's fear, whether it's any kind of anxiety, or even when you're in pain, there's a frequency that goes out. It's a negative frequency. These can be measured in the lab now. We have the equipment to do that. So this frequency goes out, and these beings, they're frequency beings, and the negative is their food. So they don't like the positive energy. They don't like the love energy. They don't like the compassion, energy. But they do enjoy the negative energy. So it doesn't really matter what words you're saying. It's what you're feeling that makes all the difference into what frequency you're putting out. And they know that. So as you start to get into this That's a Lie program to reprogram your brain and use a different part of your brain until it all connects and works automatically, you will get attacked even more than before. You just have to plow through it. And it's not fun, but you just have to be determined. But they're like, what I've observed is that they're more like robots, programmed robots, than anything else. They don't seem to have any capacity for originality or creativity in thoughts. So they keep doing the same thing over and over again. So when they beef up their attacks, they just do the same thing that used to work on you, but more frequently and more intensively. So yeah, they can get into your dreams. They do get into your dreams, and you have to, if you dream something that is, when you wake up, you know whether it's been one of those kinds of dreams where they've infiltrated your dream. And as you keep going along, you get to the point of where you recognize that. And I think they call that lucid dreaming, but I'm not sure. But you recognize that in the dream. And so you may see things going on that you decide that's something I'm not going to be afraid of because it's a lie.
Did you have a point where you realized that, I'm starting to get the upper hand over these beings, where, the intensity of the attacks, the frequency of the attacks were starting to back off? And do you remember that moment?
Well, I don't. Yeah, actually, I do remember a particular moment. This is probably, it's over 20 years ago. And I call it my leap of faith day or night. And I was in my apartment by myself, and all kinds of things were going on. I was being attacked royally and, mentally and emotionally, and trying to get to this That's a Lie thing going on. And it was really being difficult. And so I decided, and the big thing that was coming to me was, you can't do this, because if you do this, we're all going to die. Like, who's we?
Not my problem, pal.
Yeah, not my problem. Okay, you want to die? That's fine. I'm doing it anyway. So screw you. Yeah, that was my mindset of, I was so determined to do this and to keep on going. And I was, that was interesting that they were finally getting to that point of, if you do this, we're going to die. And I did actually say out loud, because I was by myself in my apartment, so good thing. And I said, well, if you're going to die, that's fine with me. I'm going anyway. And then the next thing that was coming to mind was, well, you can't do this because what will everybody else say? They'll just think you're crazy. Like, I'm tired of what other people think. I'm tired of being afraid of what other people think, and I'm doing this anyway. If they think I'm crazy, that's up to them, not me. So none of the stuff that they were throwing at me worked anymore. It used to work, and it stopped me from doing a lot of things. I was so other directed prior to all of that it was pretty amazing. I couldn't think on my own 2 feet. I was so afraid of what other people would think. And, you just have to realize that all of that is a lie. That's the programming that you get. And that is what they feed off of.
When you were alone is when you made your most significant stride.
Took that step and decided that from now on, from this moment on, I'm not going to budge. I'm just going to keep with the That's a Lie program, no matter what happens, no matter what anybody says. And so that's the kind of diligence that a person needs to do when they're being severely attacked.
Did you notice that once you began to see success with the That's a Lie program, and after you'd detached from some of these controlling, abusive men who seemed to be under the malign influence of these entities that were behind these intrusive thoughts, did you notice that you just weren't meeting these kinds of men anymore?
Absolutely. And I have to back up and just say that one of the things that I got to, one of the states of mind that I got to was realizing that, okay, I've done the That's a Lie program and it's worked, and I'm no longer being bombarded by these intrusive thoughts. And now when these intrusive thoughts come, I need to send them a love energy. Not that I love them like a romantic love, or not that I approve of what they're doing, but it's more like a cosmic love.
Mm-hmm.
It's a frequency. And what I noticed when I did that, all I said was, I send you love. Vanish immediately. They vanish immediately. They cannot stick around with that. So apparently it's a poison to them or something.
Yes, I've heard of similar techniques. I've blessed negative entities in my presence, first in my thoughts, and then when I could break the paralysis, because I would just keep thinking, bless you, bless you, bless you. And if I had the ability to formulate a smile, break the paralysis enough to make a physical smile, however slight, and then if I could visualize a pink glow emanating from my heart center, just filling up the whole room, all the time, just putting out the bless you, bless you, bless you message and really mean it, I can sometimes get them to back off long enough for the paralysis to break. And then I'm turning on the light and I'm walking around the room or the house and I'm still saying out loud now, because the paralysis is broke, bless you. And I really mean it. I want them, I want them to have the opportunity to get off the treadmill and continue their spiritual journey or not. I don't really want them to back off, but it would be an added bonus if they took the hint and, just change their ways. So I can relate to the I send you love message that you sent to them, and how in some cases it seems like it's like kryptonite to them.
Due to the atrophy of the endocrine system and the disconnection of circuitry into the pranic mechanism, we engage in shallow unconscious breathing, absorbing enough of the catalytic agent of oxygen to decode just enough pranic nourishment to maintain the virtual semblance of our genetically modified, disconnected, incarnate body presence. in this frequency zone. Although it is undeniably beneficial to practice conscious breathing techniques that will serve to energize the heart, body, mind system, bringing more mental clarity and physical rejuvenation. It is not until the entire pranic mechanism is functioning at optimum drive that the full code of prana will be available to the human biocomputational system. When this occurs, we will come into total symbiotic resonance with the holography of cosmic consciousness and activate the inherent schematic of conscious evolution that will reconnect our race and planet back into the cosmic embrace. It was our belief when we first began to hold the ceremony of sacred breath that we could teach others to practice the breath of immortality. However, it was not until we experienced the reconnection of the 7 circuits of the Temple of Time ceremony that we realized that our perceptions of breath and prana were dualistic. Instead of the breath of immortality circulating, as we had imagined, through the body, it is in fact a process of holographic infusion, a movement that has no beginning and no end. Conscious breathing is not a discipline, but a way of being. The mycelium of visible and invisible energy systems that co-create the holography of the human heart-body-mind system is of a complexity and intricacy that defies explanation in isolation or in terms of linear thinking and dualistic language, none more so than the chakra system. The template model as a whole is primarily focused upon the circuitry system, as this is the most primal delivery system of the electromagnetic creation directive, emanating from the heart of the universal hologram. This is the system that is reinstated via the ceremony codes. Breath, the molecular cohesion that crystallizes spirit into form. The unspoken vow between spirit and matter, the cohesive divine influence that allows for the stimulation of the cerebral cortex and the intricate brain chemistry that gives the eyes the gift of sight, the ears of sound, the heart to feel. Breath is the bridge to consciousness, the transformation of awareness into form and motion, the medium through which we witness the daily miracle. In the soul covenant, embedded within the human matrix, is a holonomic symbiotic code in which the human design is the sensory organ for planetary transcendence, as Earth is the sensory organ for human transcendence. The catalytic component that crystallizes the alchemy of this divine union is light. Light is assimilated through prana. Prana is assimilated through breath. Through this co-creative interaction, the hologram reveals itself as breath weaves the matrix into coherence. Prana is the life directive made accessible to the human hologram through molecular resonance. With each breath, we step into the wheel of eternal existence, sharing the one eternal breath that is shared by every living thing on every planet, in every solar system, in every galaxy of every universe. Your breath escorts you into the churning mandalas of co-creative, interactive fractals that compose the holographic template of all manifest existence. You are not only you, you are the universe. Each breath affects the whole because you are the whole. You are the source. As holographic emissaries of prime consciousness, you are fractals of the one, of the monad. The degree to which you are able to translate the pranic code is the degree to which you integrate, synthesize, and crystallize the monadic prime consciousness within the benevolent heart of creation into your own human template. Becoming a conscious conduit of light and love, stepping into your light body, into the immortal continuum through your breath. Prana is drawn into the body from the heart center, from the central fractal of the human hologram. Within the geometric human matrix, this is the stellated cube octahedron, or the iconic Terra Prana star, the stargate through which the pranic creation code, emanating from source, infuses the body system to interface with the chakra system. Full pranic code holds the immortal harmonic. Once the human biocomputational unit of circuitry is fully connected into the creation mechanism of the universal holography, it is then able to decode the full spectrum of the intelligence data present in prana. The immortal harmonic synthesizes and crystallizes with the incarnate body presence, unifying the physical matrix with the design pattern of the original blueprint present in the geometric soul covenant. The frequency of this star is the joy of sentient sovereign existence and connects the lung circuit. The Gaia Aqua Solar Star, known as a star of immortality, is in resonance with that fractal of the geometric soul covenant that defines the human as a sovereign sentient instrument for the benevolence of creation, functioning as a conscious conduit of life eternal. Resurrection of the original human blueprint prior to genetic modification will result in physical immortality as the incarnate physical being aligns with the data flow of the source code. The innate order of the primal continuum is incalculable, boundless, infinite, without beginning or end. The deterioration that leads to the entropy and death of the manifest expression of the present density physical body is the result of a deficit of electromagnetic life force, creating systemic failure. This deficit is created by the disconnection of biocircuitry. Transcendence of the mortal paradigm is simply a return to our true nature.